Okay, fantastic. So what time is it? Okay, good. All right, so final panel of the day, the Futurists Panel. So I'm expecting very interesting things. Let me introduce each of you. Ernest, okay, to my left, okay, but it might be your left, we'll see. Here, how about we go raise your hand when I call your name? So Ernest Spicer, CEO of AgTech OS. Daniel Blair, handwrite, fantastic, CEO of BitSpace Development. And Kris Bliesner, CEO of Vega Cloud. So thank you all for joining the discussion. So how about, I'm gonna how about I ask each of you just for a quick introduction about, what you do, okay? So Ernest, tell us about AgTech OS.
All right. Again, I'm Ernest, CEO of AgTech OS, and we are a biotechnology company that is specializing in creating biofuels from renewable sources, as well as using some state-of-the-art remote work methods through our partner, Nvidia, through the Inception program and on the Omniverse.
All right, fantastic. And Daniel, tell us about BitSpace Development.
Great. I will say very first, nice to meet another Inception program member. BitSpace is a virtual reality studio. We're focused on the creation of digital twin-driven learning experiences. So we do a lot of work on MLOps pipelines as well as virtual learning environments.
All right, fantastic. And Kris?
Great, thanks for having me. Kris Bliesner with Vega Cloud. We are a software company that's focused on cloud optimization, and in particular in this space, we optimize remote working workloads, both for financial services, healthcare, and banking, and then for the media and entertainment industry as well.
Okay, fantastic. So how about we do this? You see, each of you is very specialized in what you do. And if I were to ask a general question, your answer might be a little difficult to pull meaning out of. So what I'd like to do is with each of you, just rapid fire, just to get a few answers, and then we're going to open it up with more general questions, okay? So Ernest, I'll start with yourself. I mean, you work in, in farming and biotech, and all right, step one, quickly, can you please explain what you mean by that? I know farming, more than plowing, I think you have a deeper meaning than that.
Yes,
so
absolutely. So when you're talking about farming, you're normally talking about food production. And what we're doing as a biotechnology company is we're supporting farmers to be able to make products, sustainable products like biofuels, specialty chemical products, through their rotation crops. They aren't able to put out food through every single year, like with wheat. We work with Palouse. They can't run wheat cycle after cycle after cycle. So they have to introduce other crops such as canola or garbanzo beans to help reintroduce nitrogen to the soil, work as a pesticide. It has a lot of different effects, but we are giving power to the farmers by giving them alternative options for their rotation crops.
Okay, so now my understanding is these farmers need certain types of data. Is that correct?
Yes. So
what kind of data do the farmers need?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. For the past, 150 years, they've been using the Farmer's Almanac. They on top of all their agronomic data, that's one piece of the puzzle, but their biggest is their climatology data. And they've been relying on paper for the past 150 years with the Farmer's Almanac. So we are bringing in what we call a future Farmer's Almanac. We're able to give climatology models that actually are predictive based off of their geolocation, based off of agronomic factors, and a whole other slew of things.
Okay, perfect. Now, to get this data, I understand there's computing resources involved.
Yes.
Is that so? And does everybody have access to these computing resources? Is that a challenge?
I would have to say that the technical side of it is probably more of the challenge. One of the models that we use in Omniverse is through Modulus, and it's called ForecastNet, and it's being developed by Boeing and some other large tech companies, and they're incorporating NOAA data directly into simulations of climate-based information. There's even seismic, there's wind streams, all of those things. And even though they're available, they're a little bit hard to navigate for just the normal user or the normal technical guy.
Let me rephrase the question. The computing power to get the data.
The computing power to get, the computing power to get the data is out there. You know, when you're talking about cloud, in Nvidia, there's just so many capabilities of using GPUs and supercomputers that are not even on site. So that's one thing that we're excited about, is being able to help share that computation load.
Okay, so going back to the theme, you know, remote work and play.
Right.
Do we need to access these resources remotely? Are they locally available? Like
remotely. That's what I love about it. It's all remote. So you can go through Omniverse, access computing power. You can go through any of the cloud structures. You can have a terrible CPU laptop in front of you, and you're able to run a lot of these large GPU processes and bring back this integral data that wouldn't be available to most people that don't have all these super awesome NVIDIA products and GeForce products.
Okay, so here's the question. So we've got the computing resources,
right,
provided by the silicon. They're distributed by cloud. Okay,
yeah.
So far so good. So farmers need data for,
right.
You know. So what's your role? It's like what does AgTech OS do in the puzzle?
We're the tool set. You know, we're putting together the AI models. We're creating a collaboration of the data to actually make it readable for farmers. Farmers are not going out there and running AI applications. They're not data scientists. Although they are very good with data, they're not data scientists. We're the tool set to break it down and give them ethical value in their data.
Okay, good. So this is, you're offering compute resources remotely, so farmers across the country, anywhere, can get access to this valuable data and resources. Does that sound about right?
If they're partnered with us, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. Now on to Kris. Kris, thank you for joining us. So let me start off with one of your core products, Secure Work Remote. Can you describe what that's for?
Sure. So Secure Work Remote is all about enabling folks to work remotely in an office environment. Again, it was designed for banks and credit unions and healthcare and folks like that. We were an HP Anywhere launch partner, so I was glad to see them as a part of this as well. And so part of what we developed it for was to solve for the problem of a lot of the cloud providers have their specific workstation remote sort of product, but it's got very few options. So as an example, Amazon's Workspaces has 24 SKUs to pick from, yet their entire compute cloud has over 616 different SKUs you can pick from. And so as builders, technology people, they want lots of options, and so we want to give that to them. And so we created a work remote environment using the HP Anywhere stuff and tech on top to make it easier to do that. The other thing, something that Ernest was touching on, a lot of folks aren't technologists, and so we don't expect them to log into the Amazon Management Console and launch an EC2 instance. That's silly. We would just want to provide them a nice web user interface, and then they can get their desktop and be on working.
So would you see? I was working to have a better understanding of your product line. So would this be a layer that sits on top of HP Anywhere? Is that the idea?
Yep.
And is it intended to make it easier for people to use the VDI infrastructure? Is that the goal?
Yeah, so easier, more cost effective, and more secure. So part of the challenge with cloud is you can think of it as like the Home Depot, right? And if you're building a house, you could go get all the parts for your house at the Home Depot. You can do the same thing at cloud providers. The problem is that big, large enterprises aren't building a house, they're building a subdivision. And so you've got to be really good at what you're doing. You've got to be able to do this stuff in bulk. You've got to manage it. You've got to be able to not have surprise bills or security incidents. And those are hard to manage if you don't know what you're doing. And so that's part of why we built the platform in Secure Work Remote, is to make it easier to get the benefits out of public cloud. So be able to leverage the cool things you can get, work remotely, but also do it in a way that you don't have to manage the security. You don't have to manage the performance, the optimization, the cost side of it. We do all that for you.
All right, good stuff. So, okay, thank you. So, Daniel, tell us more about BitSpace development. You're doing cool things among your team, but you're also doing cool things as a company, as to the products that you put out. So can you tell us more about what BitSpace development does?
For sure. I'd also like to start by saying this is a very diverse panel in the sense that we all do very different things, but I bet we're facing a lot of the same challenges as we run teams. So BitSpace, we're an immersive studio. So we're located right in the middle of Canada, but we service companies all over North America. And all throughout the pandemic and pre-pandemic, we've been helping companies digitize their learning environments. Originally, the focus was on just creating VR learning experiences, which obviously quickly shifted as we entered the pandemic with a much greater focus on remote connectivity. And so throughout the pandemic, we really focused on creating those shared learning experiences using various platforms, some of which off the shelf, some of which we had to leverage tools like Omniverse to create. Some of my favorite would include some of the Indigenous language programs that we were involved in developing for schools like Georgian College, which is in Barrie, Ontario, which is now an award-winning learning experience to help students remotely connect with their teachers to do that language transfer. We're really focused on the creation of digital twins as part of that learning experience. So creating digital learning environments that are based on reality, which is a big part of why we're leveraging the Nvidia technology and Omniverse to create those environments. And that's all with the goal of creating more immersive learning spaces.
All right, very good. Now, the nature of this panel, I know it's a futurist panel. We're talking about what's next and what's happening. But really what it comes down to is, from an employer's perspective, what's their future? Like what are their thoughts on the future of remote work and play? And you're experienced in this, you're all experienced in this. So let's open up with a pretty good question here. Your employers, you service employers, why do you support remote work and play? And I'll work counterclockwise. I'll start off with Ernest. Why are you excited about remote work and play?
It goes down to scientific method for us. We believe that giving these tools to anyone everywhere, data science, visualization, simulations, being able to use that for operator training, educational standpoints, even engineering. When you're able to have data come from different places, whether it be in our industry, we're talking about agriculture. Well, let's talk about an example in canola. As we have so many different variations of canola that grow, and it can be affected by climate conditions, soil conditions, things like that. Now, we have a robust data set that we're working on, and maybe in North Dakota, where they also grow a lot of canola, they don't have the ability to use these tools or build on these tools. So we're able to share this data with them. They're able to go in and look at it, tinker with it, play with it, and maybe they just find out that they can use different genuses to get 30 to 40% more yield. We're able to help impact industries with scientific method by giving these models and this ability to anyone, anywhere that normally wouldn't have it. Or, as we're advancing in technology, a few of us are technologists and we see these things in the future, but this is a very small group of people that understand the power of these tools. And being able to expand it to anyone, anywhere, it's going to be a game changer for everything.
All right, very good. So, Daniel, it's, again, your company's doing exciting things. The reason I brought you in here as well is because you're doing exciting things with remote work and play. It's important to you. Can you elaborate a little more as to how remote work and play, works in your office?
For sure. And I was really actually hoping to pull it into using it for my team. So like I said, we're located right in the middle of Canada. So I live in a city called Winnipeg, for those in the audience that aren't sure what the middle of Canada is, but it's very cold here right now. And our population density is lower than other major cities in Canada, but that also means that we have a harder time accessing talent here in Winnipeg. One of the biggest reasons that I, as an employer, enjoy implementing remote work for my staff is I can access talent from a greater pool of people across Canada and, of course, the US. But what it's also done is it's allowed for us to adapt our workflow within the organization to adapt to the individual schedule. I like to live by the mantra of like, you don't really know when you're going to be creative, right? So giving my team the power to be creative in their own space and not have to worry about like getting ready in -31 Celsius to drive to an office. I will say, like, from a business perspective, like we still do have a physical location because there is some equipment that we simply cannot send home. I'll put that with a big asterisk because we do have a lot of hardware partners where they're like, don't send this prototype to people's houses. So we do have a physical space where we can deal with that kind of stuff. So don't worry, partners. That also being said, a lot of the equipment and a lot of the work can be done at home. So allowing even staff that live here in Winnipeg to work in their own space and adapt their schedule to work has had a massive improvement over the last couple of years in our productivity. I'll say like our team has tripled since the beginning of the pandemic, and that's both in revenues and in butts and chairs, because there's just been more capacity to both sell remotely and work remotely. But I think that's also because of an entire shift in the industry as a whole. People were more ready to buy remotely during the pandemic. So I made a couple jokes to Neil when we were first meeting and talking about this conference about how did more business in the blue chair in the background of my office than I ever did in my office pre-pandemic.
Well, can I ask, I mean, one of the challenges that I hear coming up with remote work is trust. And I don't know if it's a real challenge. It's just from an employer's point of view, they want confidence that their teams are working, right? And it's not just to be productive, but the trust that they will be productive. Have you had any, challenges like that when going to remote?
The worry of trust, I think, will drive an employer mad. Obviously, I had lots of worries about it when going remote initially, and I created a lot of guardrails to give the team a lot of visibility in what they were working on. But over the last couple of years, we really eased up on a lot of things that we found out just weren't needed. Trusting your staff and empowering them to be able to work in a reasonable capacity goes a long way. Once you start like really like nitpicking their time and what they're producing, you'll find that people will find more and more ways to try and steal a little bit more time. So what I'll say is like, yeah, I've had a lot of worries, but I've also found that like, because we've created a culture within the organization of accountability, and we try to have as many eyes on everything as possible, and just from like a general hiring practice, trying to hire people that really like strike us as a good fit from a culture perspective, we found that like that trust aspect is honestly not as big of an issue as we originally had thought, especially going remote. I had far more issues trusting what people were doing on a day-to-day basis before going remote than I do today.
Okay, very good. So, Kris, I wanted to ask, we're talking about, managing remote work teams right now. And I'm thinking about Frontier Behavioral Health. I mean, they're one of your customers. You've got a wonderful story there. Can you share, why they're working with you?
Sure. So Frontier Behavioral Health is a mental health sort of a local community organization. They have 700 employees. Most of those folks are remote, and a good chunk of those folks are actually meeting with patients in their own homes or on, in different areas remotely, and not in clinics or offices. And so there's definitely a need to get data or have an interaction digitally when out with a client. And obviously the big piece there is security. You don't want patient data sitting on a laptop that's may get stolen or damaged or somehow a part of that. And so that was a big concern. And then the other piece that was huge for them was just the cost side of it. So they were using a system powered by Verizon to use this very secure network that was required, and so that drove up a bunch of costs. The reality is with the HP Anywhere solution, you can really leverage any bandwidth on the planet. It's low bandwidth friendly. It's about a third of the bandwidth requirements of Windows RDP, to give you a sense. And so it's a really nice protocol to help you deal with low bandwidth situations. And so that was super helpful, because now they just can use a hotspot on their phone. They can really leverage the coffee shop free Wi-Fi, whatever it might be. And so that was helpful. And then I think just, again, the security component around the top, not transmitting any data, not storing any data at the end node was super, super important for them because they work in healthcare. And so they wanted to make sure that patient data was priority number one.
So is there something about, I mean, you're talking about patient data, and I mean, this is one use case for your product. Are there applications that really stand out for you that you connect really well with, that like are uniquely suited for what you do?
I think there's a couple. There's these sort of heavy regulated spaces, right? So banking, finance, credit unions, healthcare, anybody with secure data when they're needing to be remote. Those are fantastic use cases, because I think one of the things that happened in the pandemic was that we pushed everybody remote, which was great. But the downside was cyber attacks increased over 8-fold because what turns out is the local area network at your apartment, your house, your subdivision is probably the worst network in the world in terms of security, right? We don't have the tools and technology that we do in a corporate environment at your house, and people aren't shipping out IDS and those kind of units to your house, although some credit unions did. But I think in general, we just assume that that's a dirty network and a dirty device. It's already compromised with spyware, spamware, whatever, and that we won't store information and we won't transmit data. And so I think those are great opportunities for us to make sure that when we're dealing with sensitive data like banking, like monetary transactions, healthcare, patient records, those kinds of things, that we can protect that data, keep it in the data center where it belongs, and ensure that customers have a great experience on the security front.
Okay, very good. Now, I'd love to hear each of you to answer this question. Is, before this summit, the way we were thinking about remote work, I'm not going to include play in this. I'm talking remote work. It was either yay or nay. Like either everyone's going to be at the office, or everyone's going to be at home, or at a branch office. But there didn't seem to be anything in between. Post pandemic, we're kind of we're reinvestigating what things look like. Is it the right? Do you think we should be thinking about things differently? Should we be thinking about remote work as an on-off switch, or something else? I'll start with Ernest.
I think it's about an application of the job. I mean, when you're talking about jobs that require, actually being on site, working in an operation plant, those are type of jobs that, have to stay on location. But when you're talking about the management, I believe that a hybrid play is the absolute best. Letting someone be able to solve problems in their own domain where they're comfortable, where they don't have to worry about driving to work every single day, but then be able to interact on site, maybe 1 or 2 days a week. Go out and see how your employees are doing, answer questions. But I honestly believe that it's a hybrid. And if you're all digital, if you're a technologist, or you don't have physical products, then 100%, absolutely remote.
All right, very good. Daniel, your thoughts? Is it an on-off switch, or is it something in between, something different?
So I agree. The way that we've implemented it right now is we empower everyone to be able to work remote. But like I said, we still have a physical location because there are prototypes and there are things that we simply cannot send home with people. We do a physical workshop where we develop a lot of the custom peripherals that go along with our training solutions. So if we're working with an organization that wants to teach someone how to train people in an aerial lift, and they want a custom boom lift controller made for their VR platform, we simply can't send a full-size CNC mill home with an employee. And so what we've really focused on doing is creating an equitable experience for people who are working remotely and people who are in the office. So in our meeting rooms, making sure that we have like a large screen that can incorporate the people who are remote, audio systems and meeting tools that allow us to bring in everybody for a meeting, so it doesn't have that much separation between people who are physically there and remotely there. And then being able to incorporate members of our team that are in different cities or different provinces, that we want to be able to have a seat at the table. So I think that although we are, I would say, mostly remote as an organization, there are aspects that still require that physical presence. Like like Ernest said, on going on site. Sometimes we have to go to a client site. Well, we can't always do that remotely, right? We have to physically go there to deploy.
All right, very good. And Kris, what are your thoughts? Is it? Well, go ahead.
It's hybrid for sure. I mean, we definitely want to support both. We have a physical office, but 2/3 of our workforce is remote. And that's partly because we're looking for the experts in the industry. And I think one of the great things that came out of the pandemic was that people were more comfortable working remote. And so now we can get the talent that we need. And I think Daniel said that earlier as well. We can find the talent that maybe isn't here, right? And so we're in Eastern Washington State, and so we don't necessarily have access to the best talent every single time. And so it's a great opportunity for us to pull talent from wherever they might be within the United States. We have folks in Florida and Texas and New York, Connecticut, and all over the place. And so it's a great opportunity for us to just leverage that power. And then I think, part of our big thing is that when you do kind of this hybrid model, you still need to get people together on a somewhat regular basis. So we do 2 all hands a year where we bring people to a place. Right now it's our home office, but it might eventually be some other place that's easier to get to or whatever. But being able to get people together for a few days and build those relationships and build the trust, that's a key part of it. It doesn't have to be every day. It doesn't have to be every month even. But being able to do it at least once or twice a year and being able to build those relationships really helps drive the business.
Okay, very good. Well, Ernest, I'll ask this question of you. So you're using Omniverse. That's
Yes.
an important platform for you. For those unfamiliar, it's this virtual reality interactive environment that you can collaborate together on. What does the future of remote work and play look like? If you could put a vision on it, what does it look like to you?
I honestly, wow, that's a difficult one.
That's a big
When we're talking about adapting skills, we're actually priming up our entire engineering team on working in Omniverse and working on Modulus, which is the physics-informed neural nets. It's what powers our digital twins. It's a learning curve. I believe, honestly, that it's going to increase dramatically over the next 5 to 10 years, but there's going to have to be a real focus on the aspects of simulation design, computer vision, 3D modeling. It's going to be a transition, honestly, because now we're starting to see artists and companies really putting a lot into creating 3D models and showing, mixed reality benefit use cases, how the education is working. It's going to be a flow between institutional education and the workforce collaborating to understand where the power lies.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay. So Daniel, you're living the remote work life. the slave driver. What does the future of remote work look like for you? Not necessarily you personally, but what do you think it could look like in the future?
For sure. I think that we'll be leveraging metaverse style tools more. We already do at BitSpace. We try to walk the walk and talk the talk. So, every single day we do an in XR all hands meeting. So we all have our avatars and we go through all of our what did we do yesterday? What are we doing today? Sort of thing, just so we can all kind of like have that digital morning coffee together to get a feel for how everything's going. In the future, I predict that we'll be using that more regularly to give you that like virtual office feel where you can just go and talk to someone. One of the challenges for remote is it's hard to get someone's attention sometimes when you need that quick help. Whereas if you're like in office, you can just like tap them on the shoulder. And, if you've got headphones on one ear, it's okay to talk. And if they have on both ears, don't approach. But one of the challenges that I've found right now with remote working as a team is our team's kind of broken into like it's a 4-ish kind of subgroups, right? We've got the creatives, we've got the artists, the business side with sales, marketing, etc., the devs, and then engineering. And within those teams, there's a lot of cohesion, right? Like, so the artists are chatting and they're sharing designs, etc. What I'm finding right now with current tooling is it's a little bit more challenging to bring those teams together. So to get the devs and the artists regularly collaborating and having that ongoing discussion outside of the sprint meetings and the regular scheduled stuff, right? So I anticipate that over the next few years, we'll see a little bit more focus on like that persistence of team and a digital aspect of like how the different teams can kind of like sort of touch.
So Kris, I mean, you could answer the question of what does the future look like for remote work and play. I'm thinking maybe we could take it even a step deeper. Is what would you like to do? What would Vega Cloud like to do to make remote work even better in the future?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think from our roadmap perspective, there's a lot around just making it easier and more seamless, so that folks can take advantage of it more. And I think supporting the hybrid model. So as people have, they're in the office a couple of days a week or whatever it might be, that it's no different. Your work experience is no different, no matter whether you're in the office or whether you're at home or wherever you might be. Maybe you're traveling or on the road. And so I think just, again, the tool set out there, and especially cloud in particular, is a fantastic tool set. It's just really complicated and there's a lot of moving parts. And so the more, I think the better job we can do as solution providers in this space is to make it super easy, super seamless, make it secure, make it price optimized, right? So that things aren't costing you an arm and a leg to use the cloud version piece of it. And so I think from our perspective, that's really where we're trying to push, is to make this a lot easier for folks, because if we do that, I think we're going to get more adoption, more people are going to embrace it. As people have more of a hybrid environment, we're seeing some of our large customers who are going to more of a hotel environment, right, in their office space. So you have to reserve a space, or maybe you're only there one day a week or whatever. That presents some challenges sometimes with remote work. And so we want to make sure that's all seamless when it comes down to it. And so I think that's how we look at it.
I'd like to complete this panel with your train of thought, Kris, and I'm gonna ask Ernest and Daniel for the follow-up to what you just shared. So my question is this: what could the industry do? Client, cloud, network tools, the contributors to the remote work and play industry. What could they do to make your lives easier as employers, as collaborators, as supporters of remote work and play? What could they do? I'll start with Ernest.
I can't say that it gets any easier than what Nvidia's put out. I mean, I talk about Omniverse a lot, but the reason why it's so great is because it's not just Omniverse. They have a tool suite that incorporates Autodesk, Blender, every tool that's being massively used out there, and they brought it into a single platform. And then, of course, when you get out of those tools, you start looking at PhysX and optics, and you see some of the support mechanisms that go along with it. They've made this massive platform so that people for the last 20 years specializing in remote work and visualization and simulation are able to kind of collaborate and talk to each other. I'd say, the learning curve for our team, getting them on board and getting them involved, that's been a little bit of a tweak because they're all PhDs and they're stuck in their own ways. They're a great team, but you have to kind of work on bringing them into the technology. So I don't know, maybe simplification of non-coding tools. I mean, especially in USD format. I think whenever that starts to happen, the codeless tools on this platform, that'll make it a lot easier for anybody to be able to jump in without all that technical prowess.
Okay, very good. And Daniel, if I could steer you a little bit, and by the way, you answer any way you like. It's just something I remember from an earlier discussion is that your teams use all kinds of tools. I mean, for collaboration and so on. And I remember you brought up a challenge with that. I was hoping you could elaborate a little bit more. Yeah, and by the way, feel free to answer. Feel free to answer.
Exactly what's in my head. Yeah. So one of the biggest challenges that we face right now working remotely has less to do with the tools we're using internally. I feel like we have a lot of the tools in place to be able to work together, but it's actually integrating externally. Every company that we meet with is using a different platform for meetings. Every company that we're integrating with or working with has a completely different suite of whatever. So if we're all in on Autodesk, they're all in on something else. If we're all in on Google, they're all in on Microsoft. And one of the challenges is that there's no persistence between any of these platforms. If I put my metaverse hat on for a moment and we think about like Web3, there's the like mentality of having like a digital presence that exists, not in VR. Like I'm not going to go and say like VR, but like the metaverse, not meta, but metaverse aspect of our digital representation. We should be able to have that like persistence across platforms, which is absolutely missing right now. I'll go from one tool to the next. It has no idea who I am or what my settings are or what, even though I've had the tool installed on 3 of my computers for the last year, I'm still like a new user every time I log in. And so because there's no like persistence, I spend a lot of time setting things up or reconnecting, et cetera, or reintegrating tools, which can be a little bit cumbersome. For us, I think that like as an industry, it would be beneficial for everybody at the conference to put some thought into like that open standard of what is the digital you, and work together as an industry to sort of make that come to fruition.
I just want to add to your point as well. It's not just a matter of people using different platforms. Some are sworn to their platforms, like an unbelievable allegiance. I got like, you know, a colleague of mine, he wanted a certain platform, refused to use another platform. He's like, don't invite me to meetings unless I want this platform. It's people are committed, and you know, so you know, we need to account for that as well. So look, you've all been fantastic. I'm really grateful that you were able to join us for the International Future Computing Summit and this wonderful panel. I hope we get to speak again. Just some homework, okay? I mean, it's been an honor to gather the remote work and play industry here today. I mean, I learned about client, cloud, network, tools, future developments. I see this as a beginning. So I just have 3 questions. It's not to answer today, okay? It's something to think about. Did we demonstrate the value of gathering the remote work and play industry? Do you want to help grow the remote work and play industry further? And will you join TIFCA in the Remote Work and Play Forum? So again, thank you. And just one more point before we go. A special thank you to all our sponsors and the organizers that contributed to this, AMD, HP Anywhere, our media sponsors, John Petty Research, Real-Time Community, M2 Insights, DAS Like a Pro, Trusted Computing Group, Display Daily, and you know, the people that you know, supported this summit. You know who you are because I thank you every day. So thank you again, and let's continue this journey for the remote work and play industry. Thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your evening. That concludes our broadcast.